June 1941. Dawn was beginning to rise over Eastern Europe's borderlands. The cold morning air was suddenly broken by the sound of tank engines and warplanes overhead. Without a formal declaration of war, German artillery began bombarding Soviet defensive lines. That day, Operation Barbarossa officially began, a massive invasion launched by Nazi Germany against the Soviet during World War II. More than 3 million soldiers advanced simultaneously across a front stretching thousands of kilometers. Thousands of tanks, military vehicles, and aircraft were deployed in what would become one of the largest military operations in human history. For many in Germany, the invasion was expected to be a swift victory. But behind that ambition, the Eastern Front would soon become one of the deadliest and most brutal battlefields of the Second World War. Before the invasion, Germany and the Soviet Union had signed a non-aggression agreement known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact in 1939. For a time, the agreement prevented direct conflict between the two nations. Yet beneath the diplomatic relationship, tensions and distrust remained. German leader Adolf Hitler sought to expand eastward. Beyond gaining territory and natural resources, the invasion was also driven by ideological conflict between Nazi Germany and Soviet communism. Meanwhile, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin focused on strengthening the Soviet Union's defenses after years of internal political upheaval and external threats. Although Soviet intelligence received several warnings about a possible German invasion, the Soviet government initially did not fully believe that such a massive attack would happen so soon. Meanwhile, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin focused on strengthening the Soviet Union's defenses after years of internal political upheaval and external threats. Although Soviet intelligence received several warnings about a possible German invasion, the Soviet government initially did not fully believe that such a massive attack would happen so soon. On the morning of June 22, 1941, German forces attacked through three major directions. Army Group North advanced toward Leningrad, Army Group Center moved toward Moscow, and Army Group South pushed into Ukraine. The assault moved rapidly. Many Soviet forces were unprepared for an invasion of such scale. Within the first weeks, hundreds of thousands of Soviet soldiers were captured or forced to retreat deep into Soviet territory. In the air, numerous Soviet aircraft were destroyed before they could even take off. On the ground, German panzer divisions moved quickly through villages, forests, and the vast plains of the Soviet Union. Germany's earlier victories across Europe convinced many that the Soviet Union would collapse within a short time. But reality soon began to change. As the invasion continued, the Soviet Union launched a massive national mobilization. Factories were relocated farther east to safer territory. Weapons production continued despite the ongoing war. In major cities, civilians helped construct defenses and support the war effort. Meanwhile, Soviet resistance at the front lines steadily intensified. The harsh winter also began slowing German advances. Vehicles broke down, supplies became strained, and supply lines stretched farther and farther. However, weather alone was not the main reason for Germany's slowing momentum. The enormous size of the Soviet Union, logistical pressure, and increasingly determined Soviet resistance became major challenges for German forces. What had been expected to be a short campaign gradually turned into a long and exhausting war of attrition. Several major battles would later become defining moments on the Eastern Front. In Leningrad, the siege lasted for years and caused immense suffering among the civilian population. Near Moscow, Soviet forces managed to halt the German advance toward the Soviet capital. And sometime after the initial phase of Barbarossa, the Battle of Stalingrad became one of the most decisive conflicts of World War II. Battle after battle, the Eastern Front evolved into a massive war that claimed millions of lives. For Germany, Operation Barbarossa was initially viewed as a strategic move to secure a rapid victory in the war. But as the conflict lasted far longer than expected, casualties, supply shortages, and logistical difficulties gradually weakened German forces. For the Soviet Union, the invasion triggered a nationwide mobilization. Millions of civilians became involved in military production, city defense, and the armed forces. Meanwhile, other nations saw the invasion as a major shift in the balance of the global war. The Soviet Union would later become a key member of the Allied powers alongside the United States and the United Kingdom. Operation Barbarossa became one of the greatest turning points of World War II. The invasion demonstrated how political ambition, military strategy, resources, and human endurance could shape the course of world history. From a neutral historical perspective, the event can be understood as a massive conflict born from geopolitical rivalry and competing ideologies of its era. In the end, Operation Barbarossa was not only about victory or defeat. It was also a reminder that large-scale war inevitably brings far-reaching consequences for military forces, political systems, and human lives. To this day, Operation Barbarossa continues to be studied as one of the largest and most complex military operations in history. Not only because of its enormous scale, but also because of the lasting impact it had on the outcome of World War II and the world that emerged afterward. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.